Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and whispered, "Why am I so lazy?" That quiet accusation follows you like a shadow. You see the dishes piled up, the unanswered emails, the unfinished tasks, and you convince yourself it must be weakness of character. But what if I told you the truth is far more complex and far more merciful? You were never lazy. You were emotionally exhausted. Think about it. Your brain is not a machine. It is a living organism designed to survive. When stress hormones like cortisol flood your system day after day, the body interprets this as danger. The amygdala, the alarm bell of the brain, keeps ringing. Energy is drained just to keep you alert, even while you sit still. Neuroscience has shown that prolonged stress literally shrinks the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory and focus. So of course you struggle to concentrate. Of course even small tasks feel like mountains. What you called laziness was the biology of survival. And yet the world rarely speaks this truth. Instead, it teaches you to despise yourself for being tired. It calls your need for rest a flaw, your inability to push through a weakness. But Carl Jung once said, "Hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil." The constant demand to move faster, achieve more, and never pause is what has broken you, not some defect in your soul. In this episode, we will uncover what hides beneath that word, lazy, the unseen stress that drains your strength, the burnout shame cycle that keeps you trapped, the emotional labor that no one else notices, but that silently wears you down. And finally, the forgotten truth, that rest is not laziness at all, but the very fuel of recovery. You think you are resting, but inside you are running a marathon no one else can see. To the outside world, it looks like you are doing nothing, sitting still, staring at your phone, delaying the simplest tasks. But within, there is an invisible weight crushing you. Financial worries that gnaw at the edges of your mind, family expectations that make you feel guilty for every choice, 1,000 what-ifs swirling in the endless storm of overthinking, social anxiety that whispers you'll never quite belong. These burdens rarely show on your face, yet they drain your energy as surely as hard labor. Neuroscience confirms this. The body does not distinguish between external threat and internal worry. When you lie awake replaying conversations or anticipating tomorrow's problems, your stress response is already activated. Cortisol flows. The sympathetic nervous system keeps your heart slightly faster, your breath slightly shallow. It is as if you are being chased, even in silence. Studies from the American Psychological Association show that chronic stress depletes the brain's prefrontal cortex, the very part responsible for decision-making and motivation. This is why you hesitate, why even ordinary tasks seem insurmountable. You are not lazy, you are depleted. But the cruelest part is not the exhaustion itself, it is the shame that comes with it. Society does not see the hours you spend battling invisible storms, it only sees the unfinished work. And so you label yourself lazy, and the label becomes another burden to carry. But pause here. Ask yourself a different question. Not, why am I lazy? But what is draining me emotionally? This simple shift opens a door. Journaling a single page, whispering your thoughts to someone you trust, even taking a quiet 5-minute walk. These are not cures, but they are acts of compassion. They remind you that you are not broken, only tired. When you stop calling yourself lazy, you start creating space for healing. Yet here lies another trap, because once you finally push yourself forward, you often push too hard. You sprint, desperate to make up for lost time, only to collapse again in exhaustion. And when you fall, the same old voice returns. See? You're lazy after all. This is the cruel cycle, where burnout and shame feed each other endlessly. and it is here that we must turn next. If this content is resonating with you, consider subscribing. I make videos that help you see the world and yourself more clearly. Thank you. You have felt it before, that sudden rush of determination, the voice in your head that says, "Enough, I'll fix my life today." And for a moment, you do. You work late into the night, clean every corner, send every message, cross off every task. You convince yourself you've broken free from inertia. But then, as surely as day follows night, the crash comes. Your body resists, your mind rebels, and exhaustion returns like an old adversary. What follows is not just tiredness, it is guilt. And that guilt is far heavier than fatigue. This is the burnout shame cycle. You push yourself beyond your natural limits, burn through your energy reserves, and then collapse. In that collapse, instead of offering yourself compassion, you accuse yourself of weakness. You call yourself lazy, undisciplined, even worthless. And the irony is cruel. The shame itself drains you further, ensuring that when you try to restart, you have even less strength than before. It is not lack of willpower, it is a system designed to fail. Biology explains this trap. Research on stress shows that when cortisol levels remain elevated, recovery becomes slower. The parasympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for repair and restoration, cannot fully activate under constant self-criticism. In fact, MRI studies have revealed that self-directed shame lights up the same neural circuits as physical pain. Your brain literally experiences guilt as wounding. So when you tell yourself, "I'm lazy," you are not motivating your body, you are harming it. Yet notice how athletes, musicians, even soldiers train. They do not perform endlessly. They build cycles of strain and rest, intensity and recovery. Without recovery, muscles tear, minds falter, and progress collapses. You too are no different. The human psyche requires rhythm, work followed by rest, effort followed by reprieve. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that rest is indulgence, that stillness is laziness, that only relentless striving proves your worth. And so you keep running, keep falling, keep blaming yourself. There is another way. What if rest were not an enemy, but an ally? What if instead of treating recovery as wasted time, you saw it as the fuel of every accomplishment? A 20-minute nap, an evening walk, a moment of deep breathing. These are not acts of laziness. They are acts of preservation. Give yourself permission slips for rest, small tokens of grace that remind you, you are not a machine. Even your phone requires charging. Why would your soul be any different? But here lies the deeper question. Even when you begin to rest without shame, why do you still feel so drained? Why, despite sleeping, despite pausing, does a heaviness remain? The answer is that there is another layer to exhaustion, one rarely acknowledged but endlessly destructive. It is the weight of emotional labor, the unseen work of carrying others, of pretending, of holding pain that is not your own. And that is what we must uncover next. There is a kind of exhaustion that no one talks about, because no one can see it. You may not swing a hammer, lift heavy loads, or run miles each day, yet you feel as if you've been carrying stones in your chest. That weight is emotional labor, the effort of holding yourself together when inside you are breaking, the endless pretending, smiling when you are anxious, nodding when you disagree, reassuring others when you yourself are terrified. To be the strong one, the dependable one, the listener, the comforter. This too drains life from you. Psychologists describe this as emotional regulation, and it is no small feat. Every time you suppress your emotions, your brain recruits the prefrontal cortex to keep them under control. This costs energy, In fact, studies in occupational health show that workers in customer service, who must maintain pleasant expressions despite stress, display higher rates of burnout than those in physically demanding roles. Why? Because managing feelings, yours and others, is labor, invisible but relentless. Think of how many times you have told yourself, "I can't fall apart, I need to be there for them." You offer your strength, your attention, your empathy, and in return you tell yourself your own needs can wait. But postponed needs do not disappear. They fester. They turn into quiet resentment, unexplained fatigue, and a sense of emptiness you cannot name. You wake up tired not because you slept poorly, but because your soul has been working overtime in silence. And yet, when the world looks at you, it sees someone who has done nothing. How could they understand that saying, "I'm fine" 10 times a day is its own exhausting performance? That biting your tongue in the face of conflict is not laziness but discipline? That holding space for others without falling apart is an invisible act of endurance? Emotional labor is unpaid, unseen, but it is as real as sweat. The first act of liberation is realizing you do not need to perform endlessly. Boundaries are not walls of cruelty, but doors of protection. It is enough to say, "I care for you, but I cannot hold this right now." It is enough to step back, even briefly, from those who draw more than they give. When you stop equating your worth with constant availability, you reclaim a piece of your energy that was always yours. And this leads us to the final truth. When you have stopped blaming yourself for laziness, broken free from the burnout shame cycle, and begun to set gentle boundaries against invisible labor, one question remains. How do you sustain yourself? How do you ensure that the energy you recover is not wasted, but renewed? The answer lies in something simple, almost radical in its simplicity. The art of rest, not as failure, but as recovery. For so long, you have been taught to treat rest as if it were theft. Stealing time, stealing opportunities, stealing your worth. The culture you live in glorifies the grind, praises the all-nighter, celebrates exhaustion as if it were a badge of honor. But the truth is far less glamorous. Exhaustion is not proof of strength. It is evidence that you have ignored the body's most basic law. Without recovery, there can be no endurance. Science has made this truth undeniable. Sleep research shows that deep rest is when the brain clears toxins, consolidates memory, and rebuilds its circuits. Deprive yourself of it, and your reaction time slows, your decision-making falters, your emotions spiral out of balance. One study from the National Institutes of Health revealed that sleep-deprived individuals experience amygdala hyperactivity. The fear center of the brain becomes overreactive, while the prefrontal cortex, which governs reason and restraint, shuts down. No wonder a tired mind feels anxious, irritable, and helpless. Rest is not laziness. It is maintenance of the very machinery of your existence. And rest is not only sleep. It is silence. It is solitude. It is the daily rituals that refill your inner reservoir. A walk with no destination. An hour spent reading not for productivity, but for pleasure. Time deliberately wasted in the name of wholeness. What you call doing nothing is in fact a profound act of preparation. Athletes know this. Muscles only grow in recovery. Musicians know this. The pause between notes is what gives music its meaning. Why then have you believed that your spirit was any different? Perhaps because guilt has disguised itself as virtue. You feel uneasy when you pause, ashamed when you recharge, as if stillness means you are falling behind. But listen closely. Rest is not the opposite of progress. It is its foundation. Every ounce of focus, creativity, and resilience you admire in others is built on unseen hours of restoration. If you wish to stand strong, you must first learn to be still. So here is your invitation. The next time you feel that inner voice accusing you of laziness, replace the word. Say instead, I am recharging. Say, I am fueling the next version of myself, and let that be enough. Now I want to hear from you. How do you plan to reclaim rest without guilt? Share it in the comments, not just for me, but for you. Writing it down is a declaration, a small but powerful act of defiance against the culture that told you to run until you collapse. Let us build together a new understanding that to rest is not to waste life, but to preserve it.